My name is Claire Matthews, and today, people call me a publishing mogul. My office smells of fresh ink and polished oak, sunlight pouring through the Manhattan skyline outside my floor-to-ceiling windows. Leather-bound first editions line the shelves behind me, their spines gleaming like trophies. On my desk rests a silk scarf my grandmother once gave me, a quiet reminder of the girl I used to be. To the world, I look composed, tailored cream blouse, manicured nails painted the shade of Bordeaux wine, voice steady when I speak in meetings. But if anyone leaned close enough, they'd hear the faint echo of a past I rarely speak about. Because beneath this glass and steel empire, my story began with something far more fragile, books that were once mine and then stolen from me by the people who should have protected me. The irony never fails to sting. My parents, the ones who sold my beloved books for quick cash, now sit in the waiting room outside my office. I haven't seen them in years. The buzzing of my phone snaps me back. "Reception, your parents are here. Do you want to let them in?" I inhale slowly, smoothing the silk at my throat. They think they're about to meet the daughter they dismissed. But the woman waiting behind this desk? She's someone else entirely. I was 16 the day my world cracked. Our house in Ohio was small, but my bedroom was my kingdom. Walls covered in posters of authors I admired, shelves lined with novels I'd saved lunch money to buy. My books weren't just pages. They were friends, teachers, doorways to places I couldn't reach in real life. That morning, I came home from school humming to myself, already excited to curl up with Jane Eyre. But when I opened my bedroom door, the shelves were bare. Empty. Dusty outlines where hardcovers once stood. My chest tightened, my backpack slipped from my shoulder, and I whispered, "No, no, no, no." I found my mother in the kitchen, folding laundry. "Mom, where are my books?" My voice shook. She didn't look up. "We needed the money, Claire. Your father sold them at the flea market this morning. You'll survive without those stories." My throat burned, words choking inside me. Survive? Those stories were the only place I did survive. I stormed into the garage, where my father was tinkering with a car. "How could you?" I demanded. He shrugged. "They were just books, Claire. Don't be dramatic. You'll thank me one day when you learn to live in the real world." His words cut deeper than the sale itself. Just books. As if my dreams were disposable, as if my imagination was a weakness he had to cure. That night, I sat on my bed staring at the one book they hadn't found, Little Women, a birthday gift from my grandmother. She had written inside the cover, "For Claire, never stop writing your story." I pressed the book to my chest, tears soaking its pages, and swore a silent vow. If my parents couldn't see my worth, I would show the world instead. They had taken my books, but they couldn't take my voice. So I began to write in secret, on loose-leaf paper, in the margins of old notebooks, anywhere I could. Every word felt like a rebellion, every paragraph a promise. One day, I told myself they would regret underestimating me. And in that moment, under the dim light of my desk lamp, I made the choice that changed everything. I would build a life out of the very thing they tried to erase. When I left for college in Boston, I carried little more than a suitcase, a half-broken laptop, and that copy of Little Women. My parents didn't come with me. They said higher education was a waste of money for someone who lived in stories. I didn't argue. I just hugged my grandmother tight, tucked her note inside my wallet, and boarded the bus alone. At first, independence was less glamorous than I'd imagined. I worked nights at a diner, the smell of grease clinging to my hair even after long showers. By day, I took literature classes and writing workshops, scribbling poems and essays between shifts. My nails were chipped, my clothes secondhand, but I carried myself with a quiet determination. One evening, while wiping down tables, I met Professor Elaine Porter, a customer who noticed the battered notebook poking from my apron pocket. She smiled kindly and asked, "Are you a writer?" The word made me hesitate. "Am I?" "Yes," I whispered, as if confessing a secret. Professor Porter became my mentor. She pushed me to submit essays to journals, taught me how to edit with precision, and reminded me that words were power, not weakness. Her faith in me lit a fire. Still, the journey was brutal. Rejection letters piled up like snowdrifts. Some editors didn't even bother replying. I worked double shifts to afford rent, typing drafts in the corner booth after closing. There were nights I fell asleep with my head on the keyboard, red marks pressed into my cheek. But there were victories, too. My first acceptance, an essay in a small online magazine, felt like fireworks inside my chest. I remember running to the payphone outside the diner, dialing Professor Porter's number and breathlessly shouting, "They published me." She laughed and cried with me that night. One job led to another. I began freelancing, editing manuscripts for struggling writers, polishing their words until they gleamed. The first time I got paid more than $50 for editing, I sat on my dorm bed and wept. It wasn't much, but it was proof. Proof that my love for stories wasn't useless. Proof that my parents had been wrong. Slowly, step by step, I built a reputation. Clients referred me to friends, professors introduced me to publishers, and I started saving every penny. I bought back a few of the very same titles my parents had sold, some worn, some with different covers, but each one felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. I didn't tell my parents. On the rare occasions we spoke, I pretended everything was ordinary. Classes are fine. Work is steady. They didn't ask for details, and I didn't offer them. Let them think I was average. Let them underestimate me. Behind closed doors, though, I was laying bricks for something much larger than myself. I didn't know it then, but those late nights and whispered words were the foundation of what would become an empire. Because once you've had your voice silenced, you don't just speak when you get it back. You roar. The day my parents walked into my office was one of those moments that felt more like a movie than real life. My assistant, Jenna, had buzzed me a few minutes earlier, her voice cautious. "Claire, there's a Mr. and Mrs. Matthews here. They say they're your parents." I almost laughed at the absurdity. My parents, who hadn't attended my graduation. My parents, who hadn't called when my first essay was published. My parents, who had treated my passion like a disease. Now they were here. "Send them in," I said, smoothing the front of my cream blouse, my fingers brushing the edge of my silk scarf. My pulse was steady, but my heart was a storm. The door opened. They stepped inside hesitantly, their eyes widening as they took in the room. High ceilings, shelves packed with hardcovers from floor to ceiling, walls adorned with framed covers of bestsellers I had edited and published. The polished oak desk between us was large enough to command respect, yet every corner of the office carried warmth. Velvet chairs, candles, photographs of smiling authors at book launches. "Claire," my mother whispered, her gaze darting around. "This is all yours?" "Yes," I said simply. My voice carried no anger, just certainty. My father's jaw tightened. He walked slowly, his hand brushing across the spine of a first-edition Hemingway. "You're successful," he muttered, as if the word itself was hard to swallow. I leaned back in my chair, studying them. They both looked older than I remembered. Lines carved deeper into their faces, shoulders stooped, clothes worn from years of strain. And for the first time, I didn't see them as towering figures. I saw them as two flawed people who had underestimated their daughter. "You sold my books once," I said softly, my words cutting through the silence. "Now I sell the world its books." The room stilled. My mother blinked rapidly, as if trying to process what she'd heard. My father's lips parted, then closed again. "I run Matthews Publishing," I continued, gesturing to the engraved plaque on my desk. "One of the fastest-growing independent publishing houses in the country. Authors trust me with their voices. Readers line up for the stories we release. Everything you see here, every award, every book, every brick of this building, was built on the dream you tried to bury." My mother pressed a trembling hand to her mouth. "Claire, we didn't know." "You didn't want to know," I corrected gently. Their silence was louder than any apology. My father shifted uncomfortably, his eyes flicking to the awards on the wall. Editor of the Year, Innovator in Publishing, National Book Award. His pride wouldn't let him admit it, but shame sat heavy on his shoulders. Finally, he cleared his throat. We came because we need help. Things at home aren't easy. The business went under. The house. He stopped, glancing at my mother. I folded my hands on the desk, watching them. There it was. The reason they had suddenly remembered their daughter. Inside, a younger version of me wanted to scream. Now you come to me? After all the years of silence? After selling the very thing that defined me? But the woman I had become was stronger than that. Instead, I let the silence linger, heavy and charged. They shifted in their seats, waiting for me to speak. And when I did, my voice was calm, deliberate, unshakable. You're looking at the daughter you thought would never make it. And now, you're sitting in her empire. So before we talk about help, let's make one thing clear. This time, we play by my rules. Their eyes widened. For the first time in my life, I saw it. The power had shifted. My father leaned forward, his hands clasped the same way he used to sit across from loan officers when I was a child. Claire, we're not asking for much. Just some support, maybe a loan. A chance to get back on our feet. The younger me might have jumped to please them, desperate for approval. But that girl was gone. The woman sitting here now wasn't built on their validation. She was built on her own grit. I could help you, I said slowly, my fingers tracing the edge of my grandmother's book on the desk. But not without conditions. My mother's brows knit together. Conditions? Yes. I leaned forward, matching my father's posture, but with none of his desperation. For years, you dismissed my passion. You taught me that dreams were useless unless they earned quick money. You crushed the very thing that made me who I am. If I help you now, you need to change. They exchanged glances, uncomfortable, but I pressed on. First, respect. You will never again call someone's passion just a hobby or a waste of time. Not mine. Not anyone's. You will honor the dreams of others, no matter how small they seem. My mother nodded faintly, tears pooling in her eyes. Second, accountability. Dad, you can't keep hiding behind pride. Admit when you're wrong. Own it. That's the only way you'll rebuild anything in your life. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Third, Mom. I softened my tone slightly. I grew up watching you silence yourself, shrinking next to Dad's voice. If you want my support, you need to stop disappearing. Speak up. Take space. Live your own life, not just his. Her lips trembled, and for a moment, I saw the girl she must have been once. Bright, hopeful, before life wore her down. Finally, I said, my voice firm again, I won't give handouts. If I support you, it will be through work. I'll give you roles here, small ones to start. You'll earn your place like everyone else. That's my rule. You want help? You contribute. No shortcuts. The silence stretched. My father's pride wrestled with his desperation. My mother's tears slid quietly down her cheeks. It wasn't revenge I sought. It was balance. Healing. A way to reclaim the years they had stolen without becoming like them. You always said I lived in stories. I finished, my voice low but steady. But look around you. Stories built this place. Stories feed families, create jobs, change lives. If you want a piece of this life now, you'll have to honor the very thing you once destroyed. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then, slowly, my mother whispered, We'll try, Claire. We'll try to be different. My father didn't answer right away, but the defeat in his eyes told me everything. Finally, he gave a short nod. And in that moment, I knew the power had shifted forever. Change didn't happen overnight. It never does. But slowly, I began to notice shifts. My mother started showing up to work early, her hands busy with filing manuscripts, her voice gaining strength as she offered ideas in staff meetings. At first, she spoke timidly, glancing at me for approval. But over time, she no longer needed my nod. She spoke with confidence and people listened.
My father was slower to change.
Pride is heavy. It clings like rust. Yet I caught glimpses of something softening in him. One evening, I found him in the office lounge, reading one of our debut novels. He looked up, sheepish, and muttered, "It's actually pretty good." For my father, that was a confession. I didn't forgive them all at once. Forgiveness is not a door that swings wide, it's a window that opens inch by inch. But with every effort they made, I found pieces of the wall between us crumbling. And through it all, I kept growing. My publishing house expanded, signing authors whose voices had been overlooked, women, immigrants, dreamers, the very people I had once felt invisible beside. Giving them a platform felt like healing my younger self. One afternoon, after a successful book launch, I returned to my office alone. Sunlight spilled across the shelves, turning the glass display case in the corner into a glowing altar. Inside sat my most prized possession, the worn copy of Little Women my grandmother had given me. Her words still etched on the inside cover. "Never stop writing your story." I touched the glass, and for a moment, the 16-year-old girl inside me, the one who had cried over empty shelves, smiled through my reflection. My parents had sold my books, yes. But in doing so, they lit a fire they never expected. They thought they had erased my dream, but all they did was sharpen it into something unbreakable. I turned back to the city's skyline, my voice steady, ready for the world beyond. "They sold my books," I whispered to myself, "but they could never sell my story, because I was always meant to write it myself."